What if everything you believed about power was never real? What if the wars were staged, the pandemics orchestrated, the peace negotiated behind closed doors? What if the man we trusted to save us was the one who built the prison? This is not fiction. This is not prophecy. This is how the world ends, not with a bang, but with a standing ovation. Welcome. To the final candidate, Senator James Whitmore had always been a patriot, a rising star in his party, known for his sharp mind and calm demeanor. When a brash outsider emerged as the party's unlikely nominee, James didn't hesitate. He saw not a liability, but a revolution in the making. What began as cautious support soon turned into unwavering belief. The Senator James Whitmore sat alone late into the evening, watching the latest live stream of the candidate speaking at a rally. The candidate's voice boomed over the crowd, a torrent of truth. Some said madness. For the senator, it felt like revelation. He remembered the first time he saw him. The man stepped onto the stage with a swagger. "This isn't just talk," the candidate said under the bright lights of the Capitol corridor. "This is a call to arms." The senator nodded along when others grumbled, intrigued by the intensity in those icy blue eyes. Even then, he sensed something beyond the bluster, something deliberate. The campaign moved slowly. Few in the party dared trust a man who snarled at moderates one day and embraced them the next. Colleagues warned, "He's unpredictable." In whispered corridors, they muttered, "He branded climate change a hoax and pandemics a sham." The candidate's speeches were raw. He called vaccines a consolation prize for the timid, climate change a propaganda scheme. Some pundits scoffed, but the senator leaned in, sensing conviction behind the words. He replayed their first private meeting in his mind. In a plain conference room, the candidate leaned forward across the table. "This country is broken," he said softly. "It needs someone who knows the score, who won't play their games." The senator felt a chill. Barely suppressed fury underlay the quiet voice. "And you think that someone is you?" he asked. The candidate's lips curved into a thin smile. "Someone has to be. Why not me?" His eyes locked on the senator's. The senator had met idealists and opportunists, but in the candidate he heard conviction. He thought of the world his children and grandchildren would inherit, and whispered a prayer for courage. When he announced his endorsement, the press erupted. On live TV, a reporter asked, "Senator, are you sure about aligning with someone who calls climate science a lie?" He paused, each word weighty. If that's what he truly believes, then he's right to say it. He's not afraid to speak hard truths, even when we fear them. Inside, part of him still wanted to doubt. The other part, though, believed deeply that this candidate was more than just a man with crazy ideas. Weeks passed, and headlines blared that the candidate was lambasting the whole system. "We are slaves to our own elections," he shouted at a town hall. "We vote, and we get nothing." Some nights the senator woke sweating from dreams of chaos. In the morning, he told aides he was fine, voice steady even when his gut clenched. Everyone else saw a loose cannon. The senator convinced himself he saw purpose behind the chaos. "It's theater," he told his staff. "Necessary theater. He's waking people up. Sometimes you have to tear down walls to build something new." Conspiracy rumors buzzed through the campaign. Elon Musk's satellites were supposedly tracking him. Pundits said Bill Gates's warnings about demagogues were aimed at the candidate. Even whispers in back rooms suggested Putin and Xi were watching him like a child with a gun. The senator shrugged these off as press scare stories. One night, a reporter cornered him. "Are you worried your man's a puppet for some foreign power?" The senator forced a chuckle. "If he's that dangerous to them, maybe he's doing something right." Deep down, he admitted, If any strings were pulling this campaign, none had visible fingerprints. The candidate seemed as unpredictable in private as he was in public. That defiance gave the senator hope. Sometimes the candidate unsettled him. On a late-night news panel, pundits hinted that he was a figure from Revelation, dark whispers even in Washington. The senator frowned. Was he naive? He watched home videos of his toddlers playing and prayed over their sleeping forms. Miracles or monsters? Did he still believe? He chose to think of the candidate as a storm, not a demon. A force to clear the stagnation, not to sow it. Their conversations grew more frequent. Late evenings, after rallies, they talked in dim corridors. Once the candidate said, "They think I'm a clown, a fool, but what do they know of desperation?" The senator caught a glimpse of something vulnerable. "What desperation?" he asked. The candidate tapped his temple. "Life is short. We're hurtling toward ruin, and nobody does anything because they're busy with their pensions and TV shows. I can't sleep knowing it." He paused. "Someday, when it's time, I'll lay it all on the line. For them. For this country." The senator swallowed. The day would come when he'd have to interpret those words, when this quiet resolve would face the ultimate test. In campaign offices, strategy became controlled chaos. The candidate heard no one, yet somehow each plan unfolded by strange logic. He demanded rallies in ghost towns and speeches to empty fields. "Talk directly to them," he said. "They won't flee if no cameras shoved in their face." He released a platform, then publicly scolded his own advisors as old men, asleep at their desks. The senator scribbled notes. Tactic or sabotage? Polls swung wildly. After a string of gaffes, a crude joke about a scientist, a denial of arithmetic, even supporters asked the senator to step back. But each time doubt crept in, the candidate pulled another unexpected move. A shout down in a steel mill town hall, or a quiet interview where his soft words cut like steel. One evening, after a chaotic debate, the senator found the candidate waiting in a darkened hallway. He simply said, "I know you're worried." The senator replied, "We all are." The candidate's eyes held steady. "The horizon is on fire. You're thinking too small. This isn't polls and TV. It's a war." The senator shivered at the word, war, hanging between them. He had expected brashness, but this sincerity held weight. If the candidate truly thought this was war, then who was really on the battlefield? Outside, the world was turning. Newspapers blasted him as the harbinger of our downfall, or the last resort of a desperate electorate. The senator clipped those lines away, reminders of how many voices he had chosen to ignore. One night, he checked Twitter. Elon Musk had a cryptic post about disruption everywhere, echoing the candidate's slogans. Another time, he heard Gates talk about stopping unsupported claims and felt a pang of doubt. The senator wasn't sure what to make of it, but he felt there was something essential behind this rising tide of unrest. Still, the candidate began weaving himself into world affairs. The senator, an old guard, imagined a chessboard. From afar, he heard Xi Jinping raising an eyebrow at Davos whenever the candidate's name came up. Back in Moscow, columnists wondered if Putin saw him as a useful idiot or a cunning dark horse. It seemed every corner of the globe took notice. Back in Washington, elders fumed. In one meeting, a senior senator accused the candidate's team of running the clown's cabinet. They were furious after the candidate unveiled a pandemic testing proposal that flew in the face of everything his party stood for. The senator cleared his throat and asked softly, "What does it profit a man if he gains the world and loses his soul?" Silence fell. The candidate leveled a steady gaze. "It's not about soul," he said quietly. "It's about fate." The senator didn't know quite how to answer. Fate wasn't a word of politics, but its weight settled over him quietly. As election day neared, the chaos crescendoed. The candidates' rallies became pilgrimages. Across the heartland, crowds waved homemade signs echoing his lines. "He's..." A whisper and a shout all at once. One college student told the senator, "He tells us not to trust our leaders, but then we end up trusting him." The senator frowned. Who was he to judge trust? The world had left these people disillusioned and starving for honesty. At least here they found someone who spoke plainly. The debates tested everything. On stage, moderators quizzed him on climate models. He scoffed and quoted some past hurricane. When pressed on the pandemic, he snapped, "Ask me the day it was declared over. I'll tell you, then you were lied to." The audience erupted. In the green room afterward, the senator saw him grinning ear to ear. Not mockery, but pure joy. He felt both pride and terror. Outside the studio, tension mounted. The candidate painted America as a house of mirrors. "Who counts the votes?" he asked into a late-night microphone. "Who watches the watchers? This is the biggest trick ever played on the people." Some advisors begged him to stop. He shot back, "Better now than after." The senator found himself torn. Questioning the system had rallied the base, but now it felt like a virus in the body politic. He couldn't point to any plan beyond exposing the truth, and that unsettled him. Election night arrived. The campaign office was quiet, air heavy with anticipation. Staff huddled around screens, jackets rumpled, and energy like a storm ready to break. The senator stood off to the side, eyes on the electoral map. State by state, numbers crawled. Early on, red states fell as expected, but then a swing in a battleground tightened the candidate's face. Then, 50.1%. A technician whispered. The room froze. The final number glowed red. The senator felt a surge and a wave of vertigo, as if the ground had shifted under him. He remembered the first day he believed in this man, and now the impossible was happening. The candidate had won. By the thinnest of margins. By a razor's edge. 50.1%. A cry of victory erupted. The senator realized the truth. The very system he'd feared was broken had delivered the candidates a triumph. In bitter irony, all the chaos and attacks on democracy had led to a clean, if narrow, victory. He remembered, victory is never certain until the last die is cast. He swallowed hard. He had gambled everything, and it paid off. He straightened, squared his shoulders. Cameras flashed and voices swelled as the candidate stood at the podium. No longer the candidate, but president, with a grin that said he knew he belonged. The senator stepped into the light beside him. He had believed in this moment, even when everyone else doubted. Whether for better or worse, the last hope had come. The season of reckoning had just begun. He had always believed the candidate was destined for more. After that narrow, nail-biting victory, just 50.1%, the entire country seemed split in two. The night of the election, James Whitmore stood in his office in D.C., eyes glued to the screen as the final numbers came in. Relief, triumph, and something else, anxious curiosity, washed over him. The candidate had done it, against every prediction, every poll, every headline that declared him unelectable. He was now the President of the United States. James had watched as pundits on every network stumbled to explain it. A working-class wave, some said. Digital misinformation, others blamed. But James knew better. There was something about the man, raw, unscripted, dangerously charismatic. He didn't sound like a politician because he didn't try to. And yet, despite the controversies, the gaffes, the tirades on live television, people believed in him. They didn't just vote for him, they followed him. The president's first speech after the election was short and unpolished. He stepped up to the podium, flanked by two stone-faced advisors James had never seen before, and simply said, "They said we couldn't, but we did. Now let's clean this mess up." It wasn't elegant, but it was electric. James was mesmerized. He found himself defending the new president at every turn, on news shows, on the Senate floor, even among colleagues who mocked him for drinking the Kool-Aid. But James didn't care. There was something bigger happening, something historic. Within weeks, James was invited to private briefings at the White House. At first, he thought it was political theater, showmanship to keep the party united. But the president seemed different behind closed doors. He dropped the persona, spoke with precision, mapped out economic policies, foreign strategies, energy initiatives, plans so detailed they could only have come from someone who had been preparing. For this moment for years, James was stunned. One late evening, after a small strategy session in the West Wing, the president pulled James aside. They stood alone in the corridor, the hum of security radios distant. "You're loyal," the president said. "And I don't." "Forget loyalty. There's something big coming, bigger than anything we've seen. I need people I can trust." From that moment, James Whitmore was brought into the fold. He began receiving classified memos directly from the executive office. He was made liaison for a newly created Intelligence Tech Oversight Committee, one that didn't officially exist. He flew on Air Force One to closed-door meetings with foreign diplomats, watched as billionaires and thought leaders whispered with the president behind closed hotel suite doors. James was no longer just an observer. He was inside. And yet, small things began to nag at him. Meetings where no notes were allowed. Briefings that referenced programs he didn't fully understand. Names he'd never heard of before, like the Catalyst Protocol or something, referred to only as Ordo. But doubt was dangerous, and James wasn't ready to doubt. Not yet. He believed in the president. And belief, in times like these, was more powerful than truth. In the shadows of diplomacy and data, something vast is taking shape. The world is changing, by design. And as the pieces fall into place, those who once followed blindly will soon have to choose. Believe in the vision, or uncover the cost. The next phase begins soon. Like, share, and follow to make sure you don't miss episode 2. This is only the beginning.